Hello, everyone. Namaste. Har Har Mahadev. Now, today's video is about Venus in the nakshatra of Bharani. All right. So, we'll discuss about the details of what you're going to get to know into this video and also what does Venus being in this nakshatra represents. Before that, if you guys are new to my channel, please subscribe and hit the bell icon so that you get regular updates. Also, if you would like to have your personal readings from me, you can check out the link in the description box www.anmolastrology.com. Under the readings and unique reading section, you can book a personal reading for yourself. Also, you can sign up for online courses. Under the courses option, there are two courses and one seminar available under that link. All right, so let's get started with Venus in the nakshatra of Bharani. So previously we understood what does Venus represent when Venus is in Aries and in the nakshatra of Ashwini. Today we are going to learn about Bharani. And trust me, for me, I feel it's one of the beautiful nakshatras, right? As a nakshatra altogether. Not that its results are always very, very beautiful, but as a nakshatra, it's the nakshatra of Shukra, Venus, the beautiful nakshatra, right? So let's first talk about what you're going to learn in this video. What would Venus represent? What can you know with the placement of Venus? Further, we'll go with the Bharani Nakshatra. So, Venus is the planet of luxury, it's the planet of wealth. It's also the planet that would govern your income. Why is that so? Venus's natural tattva and its natural ability is to create luxury, to give you pleasure. But Venus naturally rules the second and the seventh house with Taurus and Libra, respectively. So, as it governs the natural second house of our wealth, assets, traditions, culture, our relationship with our family, how we connect within our traditional household, the second house is the house of our money, income, what we store, what we accumulate. It's our speech. It's the way we speak, not exactly what we communicate, but the way we speak. It's what we like to eat. It's the kind of lifestyle we wish to have. Now, with the seventh house, Venus would represent the traits of your partner, the traits of your spouse, and the kind of partnership you attract, the kind of people you attract. Because, see, Venus's association with the seventh house would not just represent your spouse, your partner, but it will also represent what kind of souls you attract when specifically it comes to relationships, it comes to associations, unionships. So, Venus here would represent your income, where your money comes from, your possible profession. It would represent the traits of your spouse, especially if Venus is also the lord of your seventh house, or it's your Dharakarka, then it is 100% going to resonate with the traits and qualities of your partner. But if there is another planet, which is either your seventh lord or which is your Dharakarka, there will be additional and a little bit of different predictions to what we are going to discuss. But Venus would also represent the traits of your spouse in general for everyone, whether you are a male or a female. Your karma with love and relationships, your relationship with the family, the kind of lifestyle you're going to have, the kind of spending power you're going to have. So that's all we are going to learn in this video while we are talking Venus in a particular sign and in a particular nakshatra. Now, Venus in the zodiac sign of Aries. So it was deeply discussed in the very first video of Venus in Ashwini nakshatra, but I'm going to repeat here that Venus in the zodiac sign of Aries, the straightforward karma you are born with when it comes to your relationships is that in this life, you identify your individuality, you identify yourself, your personality through your relationships. That's the biggest karma you're born with. Because Venus is in the very first sign. Another thing, the second thing which is very important is that Venus here is going to influence your personality. Because as per the Kalpurush Kundli, you can be any ascendant. But as per the Kalpurush Kundli, the sign of Aries governs the first house. So even if you are some other zodiac sign, you are a Cancer, you are a Leo ascendant, still Aries and any planet in Aries would represent your thought process, what goes on in your mind, what becomes a crucial part of your personality. So Venus will represent your personality as well. It will have a very impactful effect upon your personality, although this Venus might not be as effective upon the personality of others, like anyone who has Venus in any other zodiac sign. All right. So Venus being here, your karma through relationships, through unionship, is to identify yourself, is to walk on the path of your soul, because first house also represents your soul purpose. Now, this Venus being into the zodiac sign of Aries, an impulsive sign, a sign of fire, you are very passionate individual, because there this particular zodiac sign is giving the influence of Mars to Venus. So just imagine there's a conjunction of Mars and Venus. Just imagine that, so that you understand the energy this Venus is carrying. So this Venus is passionate. This Venus wants to do a lot of things. This Venus wants to perform a lot of tasks. So it is one of the most karmic placement for Venus to be in, because this Venus would actively pursue its karma. This Venus is independent. So this, what does it means? We understood what energy Venus is carrying, but now let's understand what result it would portray. So with Venus in the zodiac sign of Aries, you are an independent person in love. You definitely act as a free bird, or a person who loves to be, their, be in their own individuality, even if they are in a love situation, they are in a union. It's like you and your spouse are going to be in a union, are going to act as a team, but at the same time, it is going to be very important for both of you to have your own individuality. Now, if this Venus in this particular zodiac sign, in this nakshatra, gets afflicted, it becomes very hard for you to establish your individuality. And that's where a person always struggles in their life. Because, see, Venus being into the zodiac sign of Aries represents independent nature. It represents freedom. It represents individuality. But specifically in the nakshatra of Bharani, it actually represents dependency. I will come to the explanation of why I am saying this, but just listen to this result, because I am associating this with the zodiac sign of Aries, that in this sign, in this particular nakshatra, if you have your Venus, you are going to be very dependent individual initially in relationships or in your life. Further, you transform into a very independent energy through transformations, through the kind of shocks you get, through the kind of situations and circumstances you deal with in your life. All right. This Venus is impulsive. So the greatest problem I have seen with Venus in Aries is that you get into relationships quickly and you get out of the relationships very quickly. So there's an impulsive decision, impulsive reactions attached to love and relationship for you. Of course, if this Venus gets conjunct with Saturn, this gets conjunct with Jupiter, or it gets heavily, afflicted by other planets or coped up with other planets, then it might be a different story. But we are just talking about Venus in Aries in Bharani Nakshatra. And definitely, this particular Venus is in its own nakshatra of Bharani. Bharani is governed by the planet Venus. Now, let's understand what is going to be the association here. So, since this is the nakshatra of Venus and Venus is present in its own nakshatra, many people would interpret it as to be a powerful Venus because it is in its own nakshatra. But one thing is there, the concept of nakshatras is very different than the concept of zodiac sign. If a planet is in its own zodiac sign, it is considered as powerful and has easy mechanism. But when a planet is in its own nakshatra, it is said to be more karmic, as in not in a bad sense, but it is able to fulfill the karma more prominently. That means that the activity or the karma associated with that nakshatra and that planet is going to be impactful. Like it is going to mark its domain. So Venus being into its own nakshatra means Venus would have a lot of strength and a lot of activations of its karmic journey here. So first of all, a person with Venus in the nakshatra of Bharani is super creative. They are very creative, and literally, let me tell you that because of the influence of Venus here, because of the influence of Shukra with its nakshatra, and Venus's presence within it, I have literally seen fashionistas with this. Like people who are so careful and so keen about the trend they follow, about the fashion that they do. I've literally seen such beautiful fashion designers, even if they are not in such a profession, I've seen them being the enthusiast of fashion or fashion industry. They appreciate creativity, they value arts, they value artistic self. And you will actually see a lot of it within their personality. Like, I'll give you an example. I can recall 2 to 3 clients of mine who actually have Venus in Bharani. That is not very much associated with their first house, but they have Venus in Bharani. And these individuals are always, they stand out with what they wear and what kind of trend they follow when it comes to beauty, arts, and what kind of designing that they do in their home. So in anything that they do in their life, arts and artistic self would always come out. All right. Now, with the influence of Venus, these people actually are very self-sensitive also. See, Venus is one of the planets which protects oneself in a very defensive mechanism. So you will see whenever a person has a strong influence of Venus, they will get affected very easily, as in they would get defensive very easily. So a person with Venus in the nakshatra of Bharani, they are very critical minded. They can get defensive very easily when something comes upon their personality or someone questions their authority. Because the first house or the first sign would also reflect their authority. And when Venus becomes a part of the first house or the first sign, it adds on that sensitivity of one's personality and one's decisions. So that's why they have a habit of getting defensive very easily, and also they settle down with their aggression very easily. With Venus, since they love to accumulate wealth in the form of articles of luxury, They would have the nicest of perfumes. They would have the nicest of maybe carpets. Anything that they like and love, they would like to hoard. They would like to have diamonds. They would like to have, jewels. Anything that they love and which is associated with luxury. They like to collect that. Another thing that you'll see with Venus in this nakshatra, and I forgot almost that these are also the traits of your spouse. So even your spouse will also have this quality of being very defensive. They would have the quality of protecting oneself and protecting their family as well, because Bharani is actually the protector. Right? So they always protect their energy, they protect their family most of all. We'll come to the discussion of that as well, right? And then they also are going to be fashionistas. They are also going to be very concerned of what they wear, how they decorate. They are very artistic. They are very creative. These are the things that we are also going to see in your partner. Now, since it is Venus, the planet of love, relationships, and devotion, the greatest karma associated with your life and your relationships is actually your devotion. At every step, your devotion will be tested. And this is more so not about your spouse, but it is about you. That when it comes to relationships, when it comes to marriage, you will have to give your unfiltered devotion towards the marriage and towards the spouse. And this is something I have seen very much there with Venus being in the nakshatra of Bharani, that in this particular nakshatra, you are in a marriage where you have to give your selfless service to your partner and towards your marriage. Like, for example, let's take an example of a woman having Venus in Bharani. These are such nurturing women who are always struggling between finding their own light and taking care of the family. That's a constant pull and push, constant, battle they are going through, because either they can choose themselves, their individuality, or they can choose their family, because both karmas they cannot ignore. The more afflicted this Venus is, the more complicated the situation would become. But otherwise, they will have to take care of the ones dependent upon them and on the ones they are dependent on. And always one constant issue with marriage, with relationship would be dependency. And your karma is to transform that dependency into independency. That's your karma with love. Now, here, since we are already talking about it, let's come to the symbol of this nakshatra, which is the yoni or the vulva, the vagina of a female. Now, it's not at all in a vulgar sense, but it's actually in the most beautiful sense in this nakshatra. What is the womb? It also represents the womb, right? The female reproductive organ. What does a female reproductive organ does? What does a womb does? It carries the baby for 9 months. It nurtures the baby. It provides nutrients to the baby. So we have to look, as per the symbol, we have to look in two directions. One, that womb is the place where the child feels protected. So the protection part comes in. When you are in love, you tend to protect the partner. You have a habit of becoming the mother to the partner, even if your partner is the most independent individual. But for some reason, you will have to mother them, even if you are a male or you are a female. Second thing, how a baby is dependent upon the mother for the nutrition, for the food, for their well being before they are birthed. That's why the dependency comes in. With Venus in Bharani, you tend to depend a lot upon your partner. And there will always come a saturation point of when this has to break. Because the child cannot live for more than 9 months in the womb of the mother. It has to come out. It has to come in this real world and experience the reality of life. That's the journey a person with Venus in Bharani goes through in their life when it comes to their relationship or their marriage. You start by being an over pampered person. Then you have your duties to pamper, to protect your children and your spouse also, like a child, because this is the nakshatra where you have to nurture children. You have the biggest karma with children. If this Venus gets afflicted, you will find the most conflict with your children. But if this is in a beautiful space, you will, this is the part of your destiny to have children, to survive for your children, to create a legacy for your children. All right. So it's a whole process involved with the nakshatra of Bharani. When a child is formed by the reproductive system, when the child is nurtured, kept for 9 months in the womb, and then when the child comes out through the vulva. So it's the birth and rebirth. That's what this nakshatra represents. And that represents transformation, birth, rebirth, death of your personality in your whole life. You're going to be a different person when you come into your senses in this life. You're going to be a different person when you are in a mid age. Maybe you just birthed your children. You are in that life that you live with your children when you are totally, they are totally dependent on you and you are responsible for their well-being. And then you are a different person when your children are on their own. So that's the whole transformation that goes into the life of a person with Venus in Bharani. We'll come to the traits of your spouse, the qualities of your spouse and everything. But I think it is very important for you to know your karma with love and relationships. Especially, I have made a specific part on this for Bharani people only, because I think it's very important for them to know about it, because that's the strongest karma you are born with. And that's the beauty of this nakshatra, how it transitions you through the processes where you identify yourself through your loving self. And you have to break your boundaries. You have to break your boundaries to find your true self, to find your happiness. That's your karma in love. That's your karma through relationships. And that's why relationships and being a mother, even if you are actually a father, but being identified to your motherly self is very, very important for you. Breaking the patterns of dependency and becoming independent is very, very important for you. And now let's come to the deity of this nakshatra, which is Yama, the god of death. Yama is the son of the actual king, the sun, the Surya. And Yama is enemy to Saturn, his stepbrother. And that's why Saturn gets debilitated here. If Saturn gets debilitated here, then you know that Venus and Bharani can actually get very overly critical. So that's why these people are very picky. They're very picky with their choices and they are very, very critical minded. Literally, you see those movies with the fashion designers. I actually saw a movie, I don't remember the name, what name it was. It is a very popular movie, Cruella. I think the movie name is Cruella, or someone in that movie is named after Cruella. Something is like that. And there in that movie, there's a fashion designer who is so disciplined, so keen on what she gets out as her work. That's the kind of energy Venus and Bharani brings in. They sometimes gets overly disciplined, but I wouldn't say it's overly disciplined until unless it gets influenced by certain planets like Mars, like Rahu. But it talks about a subtle discipline. They always like a disciplined life. They want to fulfill their routine responsibilities. They are very responsible individuals. They want to always grow. And with this god of death, the Yama has to come to this plane, to the earth, so as to take away the souls. So, in a way, although it's not exactly his job, it's the exact job of the Chitragupt, but he does make you aware of what bad and what good karma you have done. And usually it's said that in the very last time of your life, you there's a flashback that comes into your mind, right? And this is the energy that comes into this nakshatra. These people do not forget what whoever made them feel in a certain way in their life. They always keep that in mind. They have a sharp memory when it comes to relationships and what they felt out of their relationships. These people are very, very intuitive. And since it's the god of death and rebirth, these people, I've seen them having so much of interest. And even your spouse, if you have Venus in Bharani, your spouse can be very fond of ghost, paranormal activities, something which is eccentric, something which is out of this world, the energies which are out of this world. With Venus and Bharani, you can even marry a spouse who is highly intuitive and highly clairvoyant, even if they are in such a profession or not, but they can be highly clairvoyant. They are very intuitive. And they in their life have to deal with death and rebirth scenarios or, birth scenarios. Maybe they can be a gynecologist, they can be a person who is operating or working in the morgue, any such places. All right. This is actually something that I have seen very prominently in the charts of people that with Bharani's energy, they absolutely deal with something which is related to the astral world, which is related to ghosts, which is related to this black magic as well, right? So basically, Bharani introduces you to the forces which are not understandable by everyone. So they do have clairvoyancy. They do are very sensitive to the energies as well. So if you are with a Bharani person, or if you have your moon in Bharani, your ascendant in Bharani, or even your Venus in Bharani, if you know, if you recognize some sort of energies in your surroundings, that is absolutely something you should trust on. If you get negativity from someone, trust on that. If you get positivity from someone, trust on that. Because you are very energy sensitive. So, with Yama being the deity, that's the effect that Bharani people carry. Also, with Venus in Bharani, you will have to take care of responsibilities of your life. And in certain cases, only in certain cases, please concentrate on this. Only suppose if Venus is with Venus is with Jupiter in Bharani. Venus is in certain houses conjunct maybe Saturn in Bharani. You will have to. That's the karma, your karma in relationships, that you will have to deal with certain responsibilities, especially when it comes to your family. Because what we learned, that Venus would also represent your relationship with the family. So if it is Bharani, then someone in your family is definitely going to be dependent upon you. It can be your partner, it can be your parents. Even if you have siblings, your parents might be, you might be the one to take care of your parents. And it's something I think comes voluntarily. Bharani people are so nurturing, they are so aware of their responsibilities that they themselves would sometimes come ahead and take all that burden over themselves. At certain points, because it's a long life we live, it's so much time that we have, sometimes it may feel as a burden as well. But this is a part of your karma. And one more thing I wanted to address here is that Bharani people would never disrespect children, should never disrespect females, and your father as well. Actually, but for Bharani people, the more grounded they are, the more giving they are, the more they will flourish in their own lives. Why I said children? Because naturally, the energy of children is attached to the nakshatra of Bharani. And one more thing, with Venus in Bharani, and if this Venus is afflicted, only in that case, if you are a female, you may experience some sort of difficulty with your pregnancy or with your eggs. And only in certain cases, you can have like PCOS, PCOD, something of that sort, only if your Venus is afflicted and you are a female. Now, lastly, the animal of this nakshatra is the male elephant. Elephants are said to be the most humble animals. They just look big, but they usually are most humble. The animals, they are considered to have the heart of a human. They always go in the herds and they're always attached to their family members. They know how to dig. If any family member dies, they know how to dig and, do all that rituals. And another thing I forgot to say, that if you have Venus in Bharani and if you're struggling with your relationships, there would have been some ritual in your family or within your ancestors' family lineage, that where the rituals of some ancestor were not done properly. You need to take over, you need to do that, and that would basically break the generational problems within the relationships for you, or generational patterns within relationships for you. So please take care of that. All right. Coming back to elephants, elephants are very fun loving. Similarly, you and even your spouse are very fun loving, might look very harsh on the outside, very huge because of the size, but they're very fun loving, they're very nurturing, and they always try to protect the family. They're always the protectors of the family. And they love to be surrounded by their loved ones. That's why the dependency comes in. That's why they struggle with being independent, because they love the people in their surroundings. They value relationships because Venus is in the nakshatra of Venus. They value beauty, they value pleasure, they value being comforted and giving the comfort to others. That's why you'll see most of the nurses also to be in Bharani. To have Venus in Bharani, Moon in Bharani, or certain planets in Bharani. All right. Now, specifically, let's talk about your partner, their traits, their characteristics, what could be the possible profession for them and even for you. So, first of all, the traits of your spouse. Physically, I see that with Aries, these people have equally proportionate body. With Bharani to be associated with elephant, they can have a bulky body, but they most probably with Bharani and Venus being in Bharani, they have a fair complexion, but it is very, very dependent on the place you are living in. So some people can have medium, duskier, or dark complexion as well. It depends on where you are living. But like because of the association of Venus, you have a beautiful charm. Your partner is going to have a beautiful, charming personality. It's color is just a color, it doesn't matter. But the personality is going to be like taking you off your feet. That's the kind of personality Bharani people have. Right? They absolutely have love for artistic things. They love collecting artistic things. They love collecting information and knowledge also in regards of birth, death, paranormal activities, or anything associated with all these things. What is going to happen after the birth? What is going to happen, after you die, after when you get birth, what do you get to know? All the activities that happen beyond this realm, everything. They're keen on knowing all of it. That's their interest. Bharani people are very critical also. So you will see that your partner is highly critical of everything that you do. You are doing everything perfect. You're doing everything absolutely stunning, but your partner will still take something out. That's how critical they are. They're very critical. I think more than Virgos, it's actually Bharani Nakshatra, which are very critical and so want to be the perfection, Mr. Perfect or Miss Perfect. Something like that happens with them. Because I think they have an eye of a goldsmith. They have an eye of a perfectionist. All right. With physical traits, what else we can get to know? Um, with physical traits with Bharani, I would say the personality is, of course, top notch, and they will have a broad nose. Some people might have even sharp, but Venus in Bharani, not considering any other planet influencing, they might have a broad nose and very sharp eyes on the edge, maybe round but sharp on the edge. And with females, with Venus in Bharani, you will have heavy chest. With males with Venus in Bharani, your partner will have heavy chest. Okay, heavy breasts. What else? Let's talk about their possible profession. So possibly you or your partner can be into medical field, anywhere in the profession where you'll have to deal with birth or the death. Nothing in between, but to the extremes. I've seen many sports persons as well with Bharani. I've seen designers, fashion designers, any sort of designers, people who are very critical minded, who are lawyers fighting for the rights of others, rights of children, rights of even animals, rights of the environmental health. That is also could be part of your profession. All right. What else profession? We discussed about the medical profession, but in medical specifically, where you have to deal with either birth or the death, or you will have to deal with wound. Okay. So yeah, so that's the possible professions. Another one more thing I would like to add here is that people with Venus in Bharani, they love to have very fast running, luxurious cars. But since this Venus is also carrying the energy of Mars, just be very careful of your driving. And I say that for both Ashwini and Bharani, not that much for Kritika, but Ashwini and Bharani. They must always take care of how they are driving because they tend to. I have mostly seen people with, Mars being in this nakshatras or just Venus being in this nakshatras. They just have, and even Rahu being in this nakshatras, Ashwini and Bharani. I see that they have absolute love for driving. They have absolute love for driving it fast. But if there is any affliction, which I do not know of until unless I look into your chart, you must take care of how you are driving because these people, since Bharani gives them tendency to have an experience, a death-like experience also in their life, they must be careful of driving. All right. Another thing that you meet your spouse when you meet your spouse, you're absolutely going to meet them either while you are traveling at a distance or you are going to meet them in person. So whether you are at the place you are or you are going away at some other place, you're living there or you're going just for a travel, you will meet your spouse while either you are traveling, either you are at a social event or you will meet them like not or I would say, but within this scenario, you will meet them in person for the first time. All right. So I think that's all I had as an overview of Venus being in this nakshatra. I would always tell you not to stop at just one video and research for yourself because nakshatras are like oceans. Not just nakshatra, the whole Vedic astrology is like ocean. There's so much depth available and so much depth that it has with the information it can provide. All right. So that was my analysis about Venus and Bharani. I hope this was helpful and I hope it has given you good insights into your Venus placement. All right. We'll see you next time. Bye bye. Take care.